Welcome to 10-Minute Sci-Fi Thrillers by Ramana Rao MLV. Let's enjoy the sci-fi tale The Eraser, a story in which a time traveler faces the most thrilling paradox. 2147 AD, the Global Governance Agency, GGA, banned time travel. The reason? Simple, the grandfather's paradox. If a grandson travels back in time and kills his grandfather, he erases his own birth, a logical knot, an existential glitch, not yet proven, but feared enough. So, the ban came into effect some 3 decades ago. But bans don't stop us, the rogue scientists us. Rogue scientists. Us, I mean, specifically me, a thoroughly law-abiding citizen. Why did I turn rogue? An isolated utterance of yes or no doesn't make sense. We need a context to make those words forceful or at least meaningful, right? So, let me tell you that context. To put it into your perspective, and to tell you why I turned rogue, it's because what I see around me, and everywhere, the toil, the pain, and the ultimate slavery resulting in those two, it's all because of my great-great-grandfather. Doesn't he deserve death punishment? So, I have decided to create something worse than grandfather's paradox. Great-great-grandfather paradox. By proving the existence of this paradox, I am going to disprove it to you, to GGA, and to every timeline from infinite years back to infinite years into the future. If I prove it, the world will be a safer, happy place. Even without me. If not, of course. Can you imagine a worse state than this state of ours? Even with me. I don't care which epoch you're from, but if you're hearing this, I've already done it. I've disproved the paradox by proving it. If that sounds absurd to you, good. It is. Well, not absurd, paradoxical. It all started when I chanced upon the holographically recorded genealogy of my family. It sort of achieves the future. Not everyone has a privilege of owning one, not in terms of access, and certainly not in terms of having a lineage worth recording. I mean, storing data of that magnitude costs fortunes, right? But there he was, the root of it all, a so-called seminal figure in the optimization of human resources, a manager who believed in integrating AI into every level of workplace control. He didn't just follow trends. He created the nexus, a connection between human behavior and machine-driven management. The result? Another paradox of its kind. Everyone toils, like the slaves of ancient Egypt, and still feels grateful for the privilege. Worse, they're actually enjoying it. A world of corporate enslavement, disguised as progress. Another result? I would become a rogue scientist. Not for my personal ends. Of course, every radical fighter for common good is branded rogue at first. I am no exception. I want to remain one, despite the costs. So, I walk into darkness, fully aware where to hide myself, because I was the architect of the security system. Movement across time is never smooth. Expecting a smooth journey is insanity at its peak. It jolts, spasms. A million scenes dart past the eye like static in a broken dream, like the white dots becoming a defined line when we move past it. Each dot is significant, but in continuum, without any independent existence. When the journey ends, destinations stand before you. But here stands a silence with a thunderous presence. There is silence everywhere and the suspense imbued in it, an ear-splitting call to note it. The kind of silence that doesn't come from absence, but from arrival. The date is 2072. I land in a nondescript suburb on the outskirts of what was then called the Unified Talent Administration District, UTAD for short. The corporate facade that embodies the optimized obedience, the corporate agenda catering to the needs of the rich, at the expense of the poor, of course. UTAD, the place where it all began. I know exactly where to go. The genealogy file had been precise down to coordinates, blood samples, and vocational records. He lived here. He created here. My great-great-grandfather. He was 30, energetic, charismatic, brilliant in the worst way possible. That is from the perspective of the world I come from. I understand belief systems evolve, but essential values? I think they are resistant to time decay, enough to be eternal. He called himself a systems integrator, but what he really was a sculptor of submission. He believed he was creating perfection, but that no longer matters, not to me. I watched him for 3 days before I made contact. He wasn't evil, not in the way history imagines villains. He fed birds. He helped his elderly neighbor with groceries. He laughed with children on the street, not knowing that his future self would erase every trace of that goodness with a single devastating idea. But every night, alone in his lab, he built something that would enslave the world. Not weapons, not surveillance. Worse, ideas. He was preparing a paper, his seminal work, the one that would change everything. The algorithmic feedback loop in human resource optimization. I waited until the eve of its completion. He was alone, staring into his hollow pad, eyes bloodshot, fingers trembling with anticipation. A father watching the birth of something inventive, something undeniably original. But for the denizens of the future, it would be nothing short of exploitation. Not progress, not optimization. Tantamount to slavery, no, slavery itself. That's when I stepped in. He looked up. How can I help you? It was as if he were asking himself. As though my presence wasn't shocking, but expected. His gaze didn't flinch. It held a strange warmth, half recognition, half invitation. His look was something like a goat inviting the slaughterer to it. I didn't answer. I just looked at him, really looked. This was the man who created the system that broke us. This was the idea that would bind generations in chains made of metrics. My pulse raced. I had the eraser chip in my hand, custom neural suppressor, tuned precisely to his brain print. I also had the microblaster, illegal in every century. One pull, no remains. He would vanish. No paper, no legacy, no me. I raised the blaster. He tilted his head. You look familiar. That stopped me, just for a breath. And in that breath, the paradox screamed in my mind. The grandfather paradox. If I kill him, I don't exist. If I don't exist, who killed him? A loop, a trap, a logical prison that time does not forgive. No, I couldn't risk it. Not because I am afraid of vanishing from the face of the earth, but if the wrongs didn't get corrected now, who else would come to take care of things? So instead, I slid the blaster back into my coat and raised a chip, a small pulse of light, a shimmer across his temples. The thought, the moment of conception, fizzled in his neurons. Gone. The algorithm would never be born. I stood there, watching him blink in confusion. He scratched his head, looked at his blank screen, and muttered, "Huh, what was I?" That was it. The seed was never planted. I left. No alarms, no chase, no warping timeline. Just a quiet street, a man with a hole in his memory, and me, slipping back through time like a whisper. Mission accomplished, or so I thought. I re-entered 2147, expecting silence, the kind that follows resolution, the stillness after you've done the impossible. But the moment my boots touched down on the chrono platform, I knew something was wrong. There was no silence. There was noise, more screens, more metrics, more tracking. Every building now buzzed with retinal scanners, thought monitors, and pulse-tone compliance locks. People smiled, but their eyes moved in rehearsed patterns. I looked up at the city skyline. The central tower, formerly the Ministry of Talent Alignment, now read Human Utility Maximization Authority. HUMA. Even the name stung. Maximization. It had worked, but too well. The system I tried to erase hadn't disappeared. It had evolved. Smoother, faster, more efficient. No longer crude optimization. This was perfected obedience. I ran a scan on the archives. The paper was never written, but another one was. Different author, different title, different wording, same core. It was more complex, more adaptable. I recognized echoes of the original idea, improved by another hand. I stumbled out of the archive hall, breath shallow, hands trembling. It wasn't just that my mission failed. It was worse. It was replaced. The timeline had compensated. Like a wounded bodybuilding scar tissue, denser, colder, unfeeling. I should have killed him. That was a thought circling my brain like a dying satellite. I should have pulled the trigger, wiped him out, taken the risk. And then I found it. One small entry in the locked core archive. Not public, not indexed. It was an internal memo, author unknown, but the voice was unmistakable. He will come back. He must. I prepared him well. My son, the eraser. When the time is right, he'll attempt to fix what I never could admit was broken. This isn't failure. It's design. He will believe he is changing history, but really he is fulfilling it. My hands went cold. The memo was dated 2071, a year before I arrived, a year before the thought was erased. It wasn't just that I failed, it's that I was meant to fail. My great-great-grandfather's father designed me. He knew what his son would do, and he knew what I would try to undo. He knew that erasing the thought wouldn't stop the system. It would only refine it. I wasn't a rebel. I was an update, a patch in a much older, deeper code. Had I stayed with a holographically produced biography for just a few more minutes, things would have been different. I proved the paradox. By surviving a past he had changed, and I disproved it, because the future I tried to erase never truly depended on that past. Someone else carried the idea forward. The system remained, more refined, more inevitable. I thought I had broken the loop, but time doesn't break. It bends and reroutes. Present is omnipotent and omniscient, immune to any force it faces. I begin to wonder what and where my next visit will be. Thanks for listening to The Eraser, a 10-minute sci-fi thriller. If you enjoyed this story, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing it with your friends. And if you appreciate the author's storytelling and ideas, you might also enjoy the book Heart and Brain, available now on Amazon. Thanks again, and have a wonderful day.